Welcome everyone again, and thank you for your support of our third annual scholarship fundraiser. Before we get started, allow me to reintroduce our panelists. Kimberly Ennix-Sandhu is an aerospace engineer at NASA Armstrong Flight Center. Dr. Vivienne McDaniel is a nursing professor at Aspen University and a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant for James Madison University and Sentinel University. Larry Rentz Jr. is a senior at University of Florida, majoring in computer engineering. Dr. Rhonda Broady is a family practitioner at Westchester Family Practice at Penn Medicine. And Dr. Jasmine Harris is the clinical director of pediatrics at Complete Care Health Network in rural southern New Jersey. Welcome, everyone. So before we get started, throughout the course of our discussion, we may be using some terms when discussing certain topics and that you may be unfamiliar with. So Dr. Vivienne McDaniel, our diversity, equity, and inclusion expert, will briefly review these terms before we get started.
The terms that we will discuss or that we may be using in our discussion will be diversity, equity versus equality, microaggressions, disparities versus inequities, social determinants of health and education, inclusion and belonging, and cultural humility. There are many definitions for diversity, but the Office of Minority Health, their definition is that diversity is the appreciation and respect for the many differences and similarities in people, which include varied perspectives, approaches, and competencies of our coworkers and the population we serve. Equality versus equity. If you just look at the picture, you can see it. In equality, everyone receives the same resources. With equity, it provides individual resources according to an individual's needs. As you can see, everyone received the same bicycle. In equality, but it did not fit all. And then in equity, everyone had a bicycle that met their needs. Microaggressions are verbal, behavioral, or environmental insults that are the results of an individual's implicit biases, and that would be stereotypes or prejudices. And they are often unintentional and may occur daily, and they may communicate hostile, derogatory, and negative viewpoints. So many people think that disparities and inequities are the same, but disparities are differences in health outcomes and causes among population groups. And then health disparities that are deemed unfair or stemming from some form of injustice are called health inequities. Social determinants of health are conditions in the environment in which people are born, live, learn, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health, functioning, quality of life, outcomes, and risks. Adverse experiences in life that impede a person's success in gaining an education are social determinants of education. Again, people confuse inclusion and belonging. They are not the same, but similar. Inclusion is about the intentional actions and behaviors you take to create a culture in which people feel valued, trusted, and it is genuine. Belonging is a feeling of community. Belonging is a feeling, and inclusion is an action. Belonging is a feeling of community with the people and environments that make you feel connected. The National Institute of Health defines cultural humility as a lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique whereby the individual not only learns about another's culture, but one starts with an examination of his her own beliefs and cultural identities.
Thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. So my first question is for our aerospace engineer, Kimberly. Kimberly, can you describe your current role at NASA and the project you led on the first Mars science instrument landing?
Yes, I am currently working on SOFIA, which is a stratospheric observatory. And I am the lead system safety integrator for the science instruments. But I also, that also includes working on the airframe, anything to do with in and around the aircraft. And we deploy all over the world. And it's an observatory. It's about the size, the telescope is the size of the Hubble telescope. And we do nighttime flights 4 times a week. That's what I currently do. My position prior to starting with SOFIA, I was the system safety engineer for testing the radar that they used in the landing sequence for the Mars Curiosity rover. And it was the very first rover to land on Mars. And when I say first rover of its type, this particular rover is a mobile laboratory, and it is the size of a Mini Cooper. And most people think all of them were the same size. No, all of the rovers prior to that were the size of the wheel of this particular rover that we sent in. And the latest one that went to Mars here this past year, and it had a helicopter on it. That is now the second one that is currently there operating on Mars. So, yep, that's what I do for NASA.
That is so exciting, Kimberly. Can you talk more about your journey to where you are to become an engineer? And if you could talk a little bit about networks and professional networks and any professional organizations that you may have been involved in to kind of help you along the way.
Yes, sure. I left high school intending on going into art school. And I was not accepted into any of the art schools that I applied to. And so that left me kind of adrift. My mother sent me back to her hometown, which is Knoxville, Tennessee, to her sister. And I must say that in high school, even though I was all about the arts, art history, and drawing and painting and dancing and singing, I was still the top math student in the high school. I also excelled in all of my science classes. My science teachers were absolutely livid that no one was pushing me towards a science degree. They could not believe that I said, "Oh, I want to go off and be an artist." They just were undone. So I was not accepted into art school. I arrived there in Knoxville, and my aunt said, she got the message. She took me to an engineer with Tennessee Valley Authority. And the engineer said, "Well, if you're good at math, why don't you give engineering a try?" And that's how I ended up applying for their engineering school my first semester there. So that's kind of a roundabout way as to how I even got into engineering. I was just naturally good at math and science. And the strangest thing happened my very first week there as an official engineering student. It was my second quarter there. I ran into this elderly man at the student union, and he said, "Hey, I don't recognize you. And I make it a point to know all of the African American students." And this was an elderly African American man, and I was horrifically shy. I was a horrifically shy 18-year-old. And, but I knew all I had was one path, and that was one path forward. It's a long story, but I couldn't go home. I had to keep going forward. Home was no longer there. My mother left and left the country, so I couldn't go home. So I told him, so I said, you know what? You're going to greet everybody. You're going to put your hand out and you're going to force yourself not to be shy and to greet everybody. And the very first person is this elderly African-American man. And I shake his hand. I said, yes, I'm just started here last semester. And he says, oh, what did you matriculate in? And not even expecting me to say engineering. He expected me to say a zillion other things. Engineering comes out of my mouth, and that was the end. He hits the ceiling. What? How do I not know you are in engineering? How do I not know you are an engineering student? What happened? They're supposed to tell me about all of them. And I go, huh? And of course, I'm like, what did I just say? He says, how did you get into engineering? So I said, I just walked in off the street and applied. Why? He was like, what? Come to find out, this man, Fred Brown, was the head of the Minority Engineering Scholarship Program. And he offered me a scholarship right then and there on the spot. And that's what got me solidly into engineering, because all of these resources right there miraculously opened up to me. He had started the Minority Engineering Scholarship Program there at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, about 6 years before I got there. He recognized that these students were getting, and I'm so glad she showed all of the definitions beforehand, because he saw that, and mind you, back in the 80s, they didn't use the term microaggressions and all of that, but that's what we were getting. And omissions, we were not being told about our opportunities as co-op students, and any of the other things that you can do as an engineering student. Well, he put that all under one umbrella called the Minority Engineering Scholarship Program. And so basically I found my tribe. And he opened up, and I stayed. He opened up a whole nother world. So specifically study places, folks that you could study with. And we weren't just studying, these guys, because we were working with students that had the classes before. So we were actually even studying what the professor was like, what kind of tests he gave, what is he looking for, really getting into those kinds of things that you really need. He introduced us to National Society of Black Engineers. Nobody even told me about that until he spoke about it, and all of their activities. And then co-oping. You could get a fellowship, you could co-op, work as a student engineer. These are all the things that he created for the African-American students to know all of this stuff, because again, it was just an omission. We were not being led to know that. So, and it was very important. It was very important. We were there together as a team, and we helped ushered ourselves through. And so one of the things, like I said, with co-oping is that when that's how I got to NASA. I was actually a student co-op for NASA Marshall. NASA Marshall there in Huntsville, Alabama is the nearest NASA facility to University of Tennessee. And just right quick, one of the interesting things about that particular job was, I don't know if everybody saw Hidden Figures, and you know that they had the African-American women in their own team, and they were mathematicians. And they didn't use this terminology in the movie, but basically they were the coders. They coded. They taught themselves how to code that big IBM machine that took up an entire room, so big they had to knock a hole in the wall to get it into the room. That's what I worked on. But by the time I got there, and I got there 30 years after the events of this movie, it was, instead of an entire team of women, it was down to 2 engineering students. and having one coding class in college. So I actually worked on that machine. So that's part of my experience, and and I took off from there.
Kimberly, thank you so much for sharing your journey. There's so many pieces, to your story. And one of the things I want to focus on right now is finding your tribe. I cannot overestimate the importance of being able to find your tribe. And you found that through the help of a mentor. And then also once you were connected, then he opened up a whole nother set of doors. So finding your tribe, for the students listening, it is so important. And with that, I would like to ask our student on the panel, Larry, who is a computer engineering major, if you could talk a little bit about professional organizations such as NSBE and how that has helped you, and talk a little bit about your journey. And you've had some internships, or most recently at Microsoft. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
For sure, yeah. I can definitely relate to a lot of things that Kimberly was saying. For me, I was also a very kind of shy person coming into college freshman year. And one thing my dad always told me was try to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so I really took that and really tried to take that advice he gave me and really try to explore opportunities around. So NSBE provided a lot of those opportunities for me. That tribe aspect that was brought up, that NSBE provided that for me. Off the back, I just felt so welcome to be a part of that organization, and they provided me so many opportunities. First with mentorship, I was able to find some of my first mentors through NSBE that carried me all the way to now to help me get internships, teach me valuable skills outside the classroom, and just teach me how to navigate just how to be an engineer and like how to really be successful through that. Networking, or a lot of networking opportunities with NSBE from having, companies come out and, pull their diversity from NSBE chapters and NSBE organizations. Alumni, oftentimes you can find lots of NSBE alumni who are currently very successful Black engineers at top companies like NASA, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all of them. And also just the members in general. There are a lot of really cool people that you meet being a part of NSBE. And then having that network of peers is also very important, because oftentimes you go to these large companies and there's not, a lot of diversity there, but you can often find out that the ones that are there are often a part of NSBE. And so it's often just a really welcoming experience, knowing that they've gone through a lot of the same things you've gone through, and they can understand your perspective as well. Another big thing is leadership. One thing my parents always stressed to me is that, me and my sisters, that we are leaders, and to really always put ourselves out there to be leaders. And NSBE provided opportunities to do that, as far as joining the executive boards and leading your chapter. And with doing that, you get to, host different events, connect with new members, and also, having responsibility of taking on the responsibilities that your role requires. And so those really helped me to be more outgoing. I'm definitely, I would say, more of an introverted person, but that really helped me kind of get out of my shell and really be able to learn how to reach out to people, and always just kind of, lead by example. Outreach was something that I really took away from being a part of NSBE. It kind of sparked the interest. One thing we really usually do is kind of go out within our general communities and provide outreach opportunities, of whether it's like kind of showing them the things we do as engineers, how it's like being on, a college campus, and just really exposing, the general community about technology and opportunities within technology. That's something that that NSBE really sparked an interest in me, and I kind of already do outside of, NSBE as an organization. And then just general friendship. My NSBE friends are some of the best friends I have that I met in college. We study together through courses, and we help each other, prepare for interviews and help each other get internships. And we also have fun outside of that by going, to football games and parties and things like that. And so it's just really, really welcoming to have those type of people, especially for me going to a predominantly white institution where there's not a lot of, minorities in general, let alone minorities in STEM. So that was also just a big thing that NSBE provided to me. And again, NSBE provided me all my internships. I've had an opportunity to intern at IBM, Verizon, and also Microsoft this past summer. And so NSBE directly helped me get those opportunities to intern at these very top tech companies. And I was even fortunate enough to get a full-time offer with Microsoft after graduation because of this. So I can't say enough how big NSBE has been for me in my journey to becoming, a very, successful engineer one day.
Barry, thank you so much for sharing that, and congratulations, by the way, on the job offer. And this information is so helpful as other students and your peers, navigate through their educational and professional journeys. I would like to turn to Dr. Harris and Dr. Broady with regard to the benefit of professional networks. And if you can share what influenced you to become physicians and what was your experience matriculating at an HBCU and the professional networks there.
I'll go first. Thank you for having me on the panel, Sherry. Appreciate it. So what brought me into medicine was I always was interested in biology, and as a child, and my younger brother was born with Down syndrome, and having him in the house, seeing him developmentally different than other children just sparked my interest in terms of like, wow, this is really interesting. Luckily, he doesn't have a lot of health problems that Down syndrome children can have, but it just, piqued my curiosity about medicine in general. And for the fact that, seeing his challenges combined with my love of helping people, combined with my love of science, and combined with like I enjoy working with other people. It I guess you could say medicine or being a doctor kind of just like checked off a lot of boxes for me. And then in terms of matriculating at a HBCU, so I attended Xavier University of Louisiana. And I grew up outside of Philadelphia in a predominantly white grade school and high school experience. So, I had good friends there, but in terms of the overall environment, I would say people were friendly and encouraging, but it was a different kind of experience being at Xavier. And I would assume most people experience it at HBCU because you get a sense of belonging, I guess you could say, like that people are really they are really invested in your success. Now, of course, you do have to do your part. You have to study and make wise choices, and of course, you want to have fun too. But you do have to do your part. But people are focused towards your success. So yeah, I mean, I know that we're going to go further into it and I can give you more examples, but I would say that in essence is why Xavier was the right choice for me, and as well as the fact that they are highly ranked at putting African Americans in medical school. It was just a wise choice for me. And I was looking to go, well, I would say far away. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and Xavier University of Louisiana is in New Orleans, and I was very much happy to have, to experience life in an interesting city. So.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Dr. Broady, how about you?
Okay, well, for me, like related to getting into medicine, like my dad in his early years was a biology teacher. My mom, education also, and both of them actually attended HBCUs. So I think whenever I was growing up, I would see how they loved their HBCU, which was Norfolk State in Virginia, and I was like, wow! I said they really love their school, and then from time to time I would like just look around, and my dad had his biology books around, and I would start reading it, and I loved science, and And I was like, you know what? I'm very much into medicine or some type of science. Now, my dad actually also attended Meharry for dental school. So he was in the Army and got a scholarship to the dental school. So whenever we moved to St. Louis, he would open his practice, and me and my brothers, I have 3 brothers, we were able to like be a part of his practice, his family dentistry. And my mom, was the assistant slash billing slash cleaner, everything. And we actually would help out when we were growing up, and we thought it was like, hey, this is what we're supposed to do. And so I just remember being in the office a lot, and I'm like, well, I like science, but I do not like dealing with like the teeth. So it's like, what else can I do? And when I was in high school, like guidance counselor kind of got me more interested in different locations around the country, like trying to go to different summer programs. So I was interested in like there was a University of Missouri. I did some research. I did some enrichment programs, and it just further allowed me to see different aspects of medicine. So then, I pursued following the dream of going to an HBCU when the guidance counselor told me about Louisiana. And I remember just hearing, I'm like, Louisiana? I said, I don't think I'm going to go all the way to Louisiana for school. I'm in Missouri. I said, my parents are here. But, then it kind of, it allowed me to just realize, okay, I need to venture out. So whenever I learned about Xavier, I realized like all the positivity that was there. And I said, well, this is a safe place to go to like really learn. And it was like the best decision I ever made. And like to this day, like a lot of the students, all of my friends, we stay connected, and it's just a strong bond, which helped me to pursue like more with my quest for med school. So that was like my start, being able to really like observe a lot of, aspects of medicine.
Dr. Broady, thanks so much. And as a fellow HBCU graduate, I can totally relate to what the both of you are referring to. And I've gained an invaluable sense of my history and just the social supports and investment in my education, having graduated from an HBCU, that have helped me, personally and professionally. And for our students listening, before I move on to Dr. McDaniel, whether or not you attend an HBCU, the takeaway is, finding your tribe and the importance of professional networks and how they can help you. So Dr. McDaniel, as Black nurses, we belong to several organizations together. And in your opinion, where do you see the benefit of being a part of a professional organization?
Well, I'm on so many different organizations, and the benefit is that it can lead to increased awareness, especially of nursing issues, and you gain support for collective actions that have to do with nurses. And most of the organizations, they will have different areas that you can either volunteer in, but the thing that I find most beneficial is that camaraderie, the networking, that feeling of belonging. Remember, I talked to you about belonging, inclusion, and belonging. And it's not just being invited into the organization or welcomed into the organization. It is being a part of it. One of the great, I call her, well, she's a mentor, but I don't know her. I just follow her work. And she says that inclusion to her is like being invited to the party. She said diversity is like being invited to the party, but inclusion is like being asked to dance when you come to the party. So, you can join the organizations, but if you're not doing anything when you join the organizations, if you're not networking, if you're not meeting people, and speaking of that, Larry, I loved everything that you said about the National Society of Black Engineers, because when I was at the Congressional Black Caucus, I was just walking around and I saw this sign that said NSBE. So I went running over because of my grandson, who is an engineering student. And I said, oh my gosh, tell me more. And so they started talking to me about the scholarships. They gave me the application to give to him for scholarships, and started talking about all of the benefits of being a part of the society. So I signed him up for it. And so I don't know what he's done since I did it, but that it is very important. It is so important for you to join your organizations and benefit from being a part of it. So that's all I want to say about that. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. And before we move on, I would be remiss if I did not mention that Dr. Broady, Kimberly, and I share a membership of the same organization, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. It's a public service sorority. And I will say, for me, just the sisterhood and the just the wide range of networks and that have helped me, throughout my career and socially. So I just had to mention that, since we were talking about organizations. My next questions are for Dr. McDaniel and Kimberly. So many students change their mind about their major in their academic journey. Dr. McDaniel, nursing was not initially your career of choice, and Kimberly, engineering was not initially your major either. Can you share your journeys in ultimately choosing your professions? Dr. McDaniel, we can start with you.
Oh my goodness. So Kimberly and I have a lot in common. I was not good at art. I used to doodle on my paper instead of doing my studies sometimes, but it wasn't my strong fold. So I loved. I actually wanted to be a air traffic controller. That was one of the things. I'll name a few of them. That was one. That was the main one, until they started talking about the math. And now I walk around my house, I have an algebra book, and I do it for fun. So back then it wasn't something that I loved, but now it is. But that was the first thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to do was to be a dancer on Broadway. And my friends told me that my legs were too short, so I scratched that. And but I started out. The reason why I didn't get my HBCU experience was because I decided I was going to do what I wanted to do, and I got into photography. I did photography. I was a freelance photographer for the Boston Celtics for 13 years. And then while I was doing that, I was involved in the music business. So I was a freelance person in the music business. I helped manage a few groups from rap to jazz. So totally nothing that had anything to do with nursing. And the way, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how I got into nursing because it is a little bit painful. And it might explain why I am in the diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism movement, because I was working somewhere and I was not treated very kindly, and I experienced racism. So the community college came through and they were looking for nurses. And I was at a mental hospital, working at a mental hospital, and they were looking for nurses. And so they said that you will work for 20 hours and go to school the rest of the time, but we will pay you for 36 hours. You just have to come back and work for us afterwards. I was like, oh, wow, that's a no-win situation. So that's how I got into nursing school. And it wasn't until I went back to get my bachelor's in nursing that I really, really took on nursing as my profession. And so what I want to say to people is that it is really okay for you to change your mind about your career, about your career focus. I certainly did, and it has worked out very well for me. Now I eat, sleep, breathe nursing. Nursing is all that I think about, and diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to nursing practice. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you. I'm just so excited about everything that I'm involved in now with nursing, looking back over how I started out.
Kimberly?
Wow. Yes, we do have a lot in common. I'm glad you went first because I wouldn't have added all of the stuff I went through. Because, yeah, I also, as a high school student, it was part of an exchange student program. So I lived in South America, and it was total immersion. I learned Spanish. And so when I got to college, I tested out into the third year of Spanish. So it was close. I could have gone into Spanish and languages as a major. That was one of my options. I loved history. And so history was one of my other options. But I just, ultimately it was the math and science that snagged me. And having the support of the minority engineering program and of NSBE and the mentorship and leadership, that's what held me in there. But I want to say, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to have other ideas, because so help me, I was walking to get my diploma and my best friend tapped me on the shoulder. She was right behind me. And she said, I hate engineering. And she was walking to get her engineering diploma too. I said, okay, what you gonna do? And she said, I'm joining the State Department. I'm gonna live overseas. And I said, I didn't even blink. And I said, okay, I'm gonna come visit you. And because she was in the Spanish classes with me, we were the only engineering students that took minors. I have a minor in Spanish. She and I took a minor in Spanish. Part of that minor was to learn Portuguese as a Spanish speaker. Her first stop was Rio de Janeiro and working for the State Department. What is she doing right now? When we're just like this. She is now one of the head leads in maritime security for the State Department right now, 30 years later. So we're starting with that engineering background. A couple of the other engineering students, I think one's a dentist, another's an OB. They went right on into med school. So I know let some students know that, hey, you can still take that solid engineering piece and move it to do something else. And it's okay. It's okay, even though, yeah, I would like to see more of us in engineering, but you can still do that. And it will work. The other thing that I also had interest in was writing. I was always writing since I was a kid. I could have been an English major. So instead, I said, well, I'll just do that as part of my retirement. So I'm actually, putting together books and writing as part of my retirement. So you can still bring it in, pull it in, make it a piece of your world, a piece of your life. But in all cases, even with my writing, I went and found my tribe. I went and found my mentorship and the leadership and part of that community. So whatever you do that too. Don't forget that. That's an integral piece. And so that's it.
Yes, Kimberly and Dr. McDaniel, thank you so much. And for our students listening, the takeaways here are that it's okay. It's okay to change your mind while you're in school. And it's important to expose yourself to a wide variety of options because you can leverage those later. You heard Kimberly talking about Spanish and minoring in something, and using that a little later. So everything is connected, right? They're all building blocks, and you could most certainly leverage all of those experiences that you've had. So don't feel discouraged because of that. And it looks like Dr. McDaniel wanted to say, did you want to say something, Dr. McDaniel?
Yeah, I was going to add, thank you so much for saying that, because everything that I ever did, and I left out a whole bunch of things, like starting as a CNA, working as a medical assistant before becoming a nurse. I was always in the healthcare profession and working as a practice administrator for physicians. But all of the things that I've done, I've used them now in my profession here. And as like Kimberly said, I love writing, and I am the author of many articles on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am currently writing a textbook because I cannot find good textbooks that talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in nursing. So but every experience that I had, I use it in now, the experiences that I had, I use them in what I do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDaniel. And so with that, I'd like to shift gears and discuss topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to ask everyone about barriers. Barriers you've experienced as people of color in your academic journeys, academic or professional journeys, and what advice you would give to other minority students pursuing careers in those areas. But before I do that, and we'll start first with our physicians, Dr. Harris, Dr. Broady, Larry, Kimberly, and then Dr. McDaniel. I'd like to reemphasize some statistics that I shared at the beginning of the session. Black and Hispanic workers continue to be underrepresented in the STEM workforce. Blacks make up 11% of the US workforce, but represent only 9% of STEM workers, while Hispanics comprise about 16% of the US workforce, but only 7% of all STEM workers. Black female doctors represent only 2% of physicians. Black male physicians make up less than 3% of physicians. And so you see the trend. And then in the nursing workforce, African Americans make up only 6% of the nursing workforce. Asians make up approximately 7.5%, and Hispanics approximately 5%. So I just wanted to share those numbers before we get started, talking about barriers to that end. We'll start with Dr. Harris.
Thank you. So I would say for barriers, not so much well, I'll just give you my experience. In medical school, the volume of things that you need to learn, it's similar to turning on like a fire hydrant and having to drink from it. So and you know that some things you're going to learn because it's important to learn, and then some things you just have to take a loss. So I would say the important thing for medical schools is forming your team, connecting with people who your study group is. Back when I was in medical school, we would take like tests on paper, and we would get old tests and make sure that we understood, the questions that were being asked. Because of course you could be learning everything that you think is important, but it turns out it's not the question. Like it's not what's being asked on the test that you're learning. So I think understanding, like kind of getting connected with a group and understanding what's being asked in terms of the testing, that's very important. And luckily, I would say, my medical school had a great minority community, and we were able to connect early. We had a summer program, so we were able to connect before the semester started. And then going into the semester, we kind of were already established. So luckily, from that point of view, I was good. I would say the thing that was a bit challenging was when there's a part of medical school where you're out you're seeing patients on your own. And the very first time that happened, it's a new thing. I mean, you have a little bit of training ahead of time, but then you're kind of out there and it's a brand new thing. So for my very first, it's called rotation. My very first rotation, you're being asked questions about different medical problems, different diseases, and I may not have had the right answer, but I can say that, every day I was going back to my books, learning what I needed to learn, and then just so I could kind of, have the right answer the next time. At the end of the rotation, I got what I didn't think was a good grade. And I advocated for myself because I said, wait a minute, I know that in the beginning I wasn't good, but I did make up for my loss, from my deficit. So you need to really make sure that that's being accounted for. So I think from the point of view of, not everyone is perfect and you're not always going to be straight A, but you need to make sure that you advocate for yourself, because if you don't, then no one will. And I knew my goal was to be a physician. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to just not graduate or not get through this thing. So again, I think the important thing there is just knowing, not being afraid, opening, like going to who you need to go to let them know, hey, I'm in trouble, or hey, this is not right. We need to take some steps to kind of rectify the situation.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Dr. Broady?
Yes, I kind of want to tag along with what Dr. Harris had said related to like the barriers. I think because we both attended the same undergrad, we kind of had the barriers they knew about. They knew about, hey, there's barriers for our population. So we actually had a great program to help us get into medical school and try to pave the way. So, I definitely can understand if it's not there. Again, we had the advantage of hey, this is the program. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to take. These are some avenues that will help you be a stronger candidate for med school. Whenever, for me personally, going into med school, when I went to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. They also had a great support for the Office of Minority Affairs. We actually attended in the summer so that we could kind of get used to the program, the pace, be aware of who was in our location, other professors, other students that had matriculated in the past. So we were connected. So this actually helped us a lot. And of course, like during our studies, it was pretty intense. And we also learned about like finding those that would be a part of your study group, so that, you know, we like we always said, getting ready for a test. So we're all going to make it. Like we're all going to make it. And we stuck together. If someone was kind of, you know, having issues, we had extra tutoring sessions. We're like, come on, we're all getting through. And, you know, during the whole time we did it. After, you know, our first 2 years, we went on rotations, and then you're alone. You know, you're alone, and you're going into places that, you know, nobody knows you. And I definitely had experiences where, like, I know, you know, I knew I went away to Georgia once, and, you know, I was in, you know, a small town, and, you know, I knocked on the door, like, here, I'm here, you know, I'm here for my rotation. And there, you know, I could tell, like, it was kind of like, oh, and I felt it. And I said, you know what? I know I'm only here for a little while. I'm here just to learn enough so that I can, like, move on and be able to help me in the future. And, you know, I knew that, you know, I may not have been so welcomed, but, you know, I just took all of it that I could. And then, you know, helped it for later, because, you know, I've definitely had other experiences, you know, as a practicing physician, on just trying to, I guess, have people trust enough and know that I'm there for them. And, you know, it's, you know, learning experience, and I've grown a lot. But if there was any barriers initially in undergrad, I felt like, you know, we were helped a lot. But what I've had to experience, you know, has helped out for later. You know, I would just say for all the students, you know, reach out to anyone that will help you. But, you know, sometimes you can't do it alone.
Thank you, Dr. Broady. Larry?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of things that were said. First, I would say one of the biggest things is, when my parents were not engineers, a lot of my peers in my classes, either they had access to engineering education before college, like their high schools or middle schools provide programs for them, or their parents were engineers, so they knew a lot of this material that's already in class, like beforehand. Versus me, you know, my dad was in the Army, my mother, she was in the health field, so they didn't know too much about how to navigate the engineering field. And then also the schools I went to didn't necessarily provide a lot of opportunities to learn about engineering. Like, I didn't even know the different types when I came to college. So I would say that was one of the biggest barriers, is just figuring out, like, what is engineering and where do I fit and what I really like about it. And so, like I said, NSBE was great for that. They provided all that information for me to really figure out, like, what I really liked, how to really navigate the engineering field. And then again, like the study groups that we pulled each other along in these rigorous classes. We weren't going to let anyone fail. We weren't going to let anyone, you know, fall behind. And so that was a huge thing that I also took away. And then one would be kind of a little bit isolation sometimes. Being at the PWI, again, you're the minority in the classroom, and so sometimes you can feel isolated being in those classrooms. But again, we would take classes together, whether it was just 2 or 3 of us in the class, the only Black kids in the class, we would take them together, and we would hold each other accountable and really pull each other along. Another thing would be imposter syndrome. Definitely feeling like you don't belong there, or you don't feel like you deserve to be there in class or even at these internships. Sometimes you just feel like, okay, someone made a mistake. I shouldn't be here. Someone made a mistake picking me to be here. So that was a thing that I still have to overcome sometimes. But the thing I really tell myself to overcome that is, I know the work that I put in to be here. It was hours of prepping for interviews, or hours of just learning new skills outside of the classroom, hours of me just, you know, really investing time into myself to really understand the different opportunities or the different things that I'm good at to get here. So just overcoming it is, you know, just really the takeaways are just having people to support you finding there are people there, and you support them, they support you, and you guys help each other. You guys help each other climb up together. And then also just really understanding that you put the time in to be here, and you deserve the opportunity you're currently in. So those are definitely some barriers I had and how I kind of overcame them.
Thank you, Larry. Dr. McDaniel, and then Kimberly.
Thank you. Larry, I just can't say enough of how proud I am of you. That, I mean, you said everything that I would have said, especially the part about having, being in a PWI and just being a handful of people that look like yourself. And that was my situation when I first got into nursing. And then I was the older adult in the class. I mean, we had maybe two other people that were older than I that were in the course, because we had some LPNs who were in school now to become RNs. And I don't want to really get into the barriers, because there were a few, because of my complexion, because of because I was Black. And so what I did, I took all of the people that were in our class that wanted to come along, and I would make these practice tests for the students to take, because we had a professor who told one of our peers that she needed to drop the course because there's no way she was going to pass this, become a nurse. And she did not consider that this student had other things. She was working full time. She had children she was taking care of, I think 4 at the time. And she just wanted to finish something, accomplish something, and a goal that she had set for herself. To have the professor to tell her that she would never become a nurse. When she came to me to tell me, I said, "Oh, yes, you will." And I had a few nurses, like I said, a few of the students, because I was older, and it was maybe about 8 of us, and we made it through, and everyone finished. Those students, you have to have a mentor. Let me just say that. You have to have a mentor. Even if you are a student in school, before you start your career, you have to have a mentor. Mentors, let me put an S on that. More than one mentor, because of course you have more than one class. So just mentors from different backgrounds. And also you need to have the peace of mind that you can do this. You set your goal, and then you make the decision. You cannot, if you know what I mean. You cannot say that you cannot. So you cannot afford to cannot. You have to do it. So as far as the lessons that I learned along the way, it really was just that you cannot go it alone. You have to have mentors. You have to be determined. You have to persevere. Never give up, because if that is if what you want to do is what you have set your goal for, always finish it. Now, before the old Vivienne Pierce, that was before she became Pierce McDaniel, didn't finish anything. I would start all types of things and never finish them, because I used to let people really tell me, and I would listen to them when they say, "Oh, you're not going to be able to do that. You can't do that. Who do you think you are that you would even think that you can do that?" I used to listen to those people. And so you cannot let anybody steal your confidence. and it's up to you to build it. And you know, and just forge forward. Do not let anybody tell you that you cannot do it. I did not let anything impede me from starting out with my associates in nursing first, then going to my bachelor's, then my master's, and then my doctorate. And I started, and I shouldn't tell you students this because I want you to start straight out of high school. I did not start until I was in my mid 40s. So you can do this.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. That was just so inspirational. And final words on this topic from Kimberly.
First off, PWI, I'm going to go with that means predominantly white institute.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I went to one too. And so I too felt the microaggressions, the gaslighting, from the professors grading me harder than my white male counterparts, all the way over to the white roommates not wanting to be my roommate because of the color of my skin, because they would literally come in, see I was Black, turn around and leave. And everything in between. So, and what everybody said is true. I would say it a little different. And and for sure, self-advocate. Be your advocate. But the additional thing I would say is don't doubt yourself. Do not let them make you doubt yourself. No, what did they say in church? Be convicted. Know that you know that you know that you know you can do it. And for sure, lean into your tribe. Do not go off into a void. Talk. Find your mentors. Talk to your friends, your support group. We are all in this together, and nothing is new. Trust me, nothing is new. We have all seen it all. So I suspect amongst all of us, you can come up with a solution. So that's the thing. This is not new. And I think one of the things I spoke with her a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago was what I've seen today is what I saw back when I was in college. So we are here to help you and to support you. And again, don't let them make you doubt yourself. Know that you know that you know you can do it. So.
Thank you, Kimberly. And to your point, I'd like to turn once again to Dr. McDaniel, who is the diversity, equity, and inclusion expert on this panel, and talk about national strategies, because as Kimberly said, this is nothing new, right? So can you talk about national strategies in place to improve the numbers to achieve a state of health equity? There's an underrepresentation of Black, indigenous people and people of color in nursing and other professions, STEM and healthcare. And so if you can talk about, what's trending now in terms of national strategies to come to a state of equity and health equity.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Thank you. Well, I can talk to you more about what's trending in nursing. And one of the things that is happening right now is that we have the Campaign for Action, and we have a new Future of Nursing report that just came out, the Future of Nursing Report 2020-2030. and its primary focus is on health equity. And it's amazing. When I tell you it's amazing, what they did is they developed these worksheets with these action items and these strategies for increasing the number of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And we just found out recently about some of the things that were keeping Indigenous people or Native Americans and from coming into nursing. And it's too much for me to talk about, but just know that there's something that has been put into place to improve that. But we also have now holistic admissions, which is the universities are looking at the whole student and not just at your GPA. They're looking at what do you bring to the campus? What do you bring as your whole self to that campus? And that is going to increase the numbers, I believe. And then we have also for historically underrepresented people, we have started these clubs, and you know about. You are one of the persons that's doing just tremendous work there. We're looking at starting with children, even in the second grade, because this is where you are saying what you want to do. You say it as a person in kindergarten, but you really are saying what you want to do. You're looking at, oh, wow, I see my teacher, and my teacher is doing all of these great things. Maybe I want to become a teacher. So you're looking at that now, in the second grade. And so developing clubs throughout all of these professions, STEM, nursing, for physicians, is something that needs to start early. And a lot of the national organizations are now doing that. You have our president, who, by the way, is the president of the American Nurses Association, who is the first male nurse to become a president of our organization. But not only that, he's the third Black person in the 125-year history of the American Nurses Association. So, he's out there, and he's at the national level, and he's out there coming up with strategies for how we can increase the nursing pipeline. And it's very fragmented right now. And it is the same for physicians. It's just very fragmented. And so we have to, when you have the opportunity to be an advocate and to play a role in improving and increasing the numbers, please just do so. And you can do that again by joining organizations. The American Medical Association is doing tremendous work right now. And just think now, this all happened really after after the murder of George Floyd. And so organizations that you never thought would be doing things at the national level are doing things to increase the numbers and get more people into nursing. But remember, these are people who have not even considered going to college yet. And then students that are in college that may have changed their major, as we mentioned before. I just encourage everyone to please, whatever you can do to improve or increase the numbers, please do your part and be an advocate. But there are several national strategies out there.
Thank you, Dr. McDaniel. And the strategies that you mentioned are, as you noted, applicable across all disciplines and across all sectors. So thank you so much for that. And we are almost at time, but before we go, I would just like to ask our panel, what's the most rewarding parts of what you do and what's most frustrating? And we'll start with our physicians. But before you answer that, guys, if you can just clarify for our viewers the difference between an MD, medical doctor, and a DO, doctor of osteopathy. And then you can answer the next question about what's most rewarding and most frustrating.
Okay, I can answer the question in reference to MD versus DO. Like MD is actually allopathic and DO is osteopathic. It's just a different philosophy related to medicine. DO is more holistic, just pretty much like seeing a patient as a whole. And we went and learned a little bit more about the musculoskeletal system and like what factors we can actually treat certain conditions with touching the body, doing techniques. For example, like if we're treating like headaches or sinusitis, lower back pain with certain techniques, so that we don't have to use medications. I think when I was in school, my roommate was also in medical school, but an allopathic MD school. We had the same courses. You can go into the same specialties, but we actually just had an extra lab where we learned a little bit more about the musculoskeletal system. So we were more hands-on with being with our classmates in the beginning with the techniques. And I knew I always wanted to do primary care, and that, like, with being a osteopathic physician, it was like really based on primary care. So that's why I became more interested. So I don't know if you have more to add, Jasmine.
No, I think you summarized it pretty good. Yeah, I would say, I'm a MD, so we're taught, traditional treatments like, medication and x-rays and things like that. But again, it's not to say that, and we do look at the body as a whole, but again, I don't do manipulations. So that is something that if I wanted to learn, I could, but it wasn't something that I was taught in my in my formal training. So I think you summarized it pretty well. And then Rhonda, did you want to talk about your should I just go ahead and talk about
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So what I like about and what I don't like about, so I'm a pediatrician, and I've finished training. So just if the audience was curious about it, after you finish high school, it's basically 11 years of training, school training, to become a pediatrician. And I keep in mind, you're not in the classroom in the seat the whole entire time. 4 years of college for most people, 4 years of medical school, but within in the traditional medical school, typically 2 years. The first 2 years you're in the classrooms, more in the classroom setting. The last 2 years you're with the patients in the office or in the hospital, doing rotations in the, as they say, outpatient setting. So I finished my training, like all together, everything. After you finish high school, you finish your college, then you finish medical school, which is 4 years. And then basically after that, you are a doctor, but then you have to decide what kind of doctor you want to be. And as far as pediatrician, it's 3 years of training. So you're an apprentice doctor, as they say, a resident. You're a resident, you're in your residency, you're an apprentice to another doctor. So I would see doctors and then report to a senior doctor. Then after 3 years of that, then I'm on my own. So as far as I've been on my own for since 2002, I think. Yeah, 2002. So So it's been like almost 20 years. So in terms of what over the past 20 years, I find I love as a pediatrician, I see children from birth to when they turn 18. And I love, getting, just seeing them pass as time passes, seeing them develop, helping their parents. They trust me, I trust them. I feel like it's a beautiful thing, the relationship that I form with my patient, helping people. It's really what, keeps me, it's just really what makes my day. And I think that, and knowing that I'm making a difference in my patients' lives, that's what sees me through the rough times being, so in this day of the business side of medicine, having such a heavy hand with how one practices medicine. A lot of things are very regulated. Like you would think that if you want a certain medicine for a person, it would just be that way, but a lot of times it's not. I work for a federally qualified healthcare center. And therefore, it's a center that takes care of people that some people do have insurance, like private insurance, but some people don't. They have Medicaid or state insurance, and then some people don't have any insurance at all because some of the patients are not U.S. citizens. So in that respect, we do what we can, but sometimes those patients that don't have insurance, we cannot. It's very difficult to have them get to a specialist or to get more advanced care. And their medicines they can afford basic medicines, but more expensive medicines, it's a lot of times a challenge. So that's the rough part, is the reality of the financial part of medicine, and what one needs to do to stay viable, as they say, to be able to pay your bills and to help people. It seems like sometimes it doesn't. One is battling against the other. So that's the challenging thing. But again, I mean, just like how what we're all saying is that I think you have to listen to yourself and listen to what brings you alive. And if helping people in this way is what really brings you passion and makes you very happy, then these setbacks that you're going to have are not. Your happiness is going to outweigh the setbacks. You're going to figure out how to get around that, and the happiness is going to see you through the hard times. So I think that's
well said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Dr. Broady?
Okay. Well, what makes me happy and what I'm doing right now is just being able to see like the patients that I've started with. Now, it's been about 20 years for me too. I started working in Delaware at a FQHC, so I was able to see a lot of patients at that time. A lot more didn't have insurance, until the more recent years, and I was able to like really help them from a start. And over the years, the patients, I would see other family members. I remember, since I'm in Pennsylvania at this time, I actually am still connected with some of the patients from Delaware. So I still see them. I see them growing. I actually have some of those patients that have followed me to Pennsylvania. So being able to like be a part of like long-term health with patients and their families, that makes me really happy. Being able to be that person that they trust, and I can be that individual that listens to everything that's going on related to their health, like the social factors, financial factors, emotional factors. That's really what I went into medicine for, being able to help be that guidance for treatment. If you're talking about some things that have been more of failures, for me watching over these years, of course, like insurance related to people getting their medications, being able to get certain tests, see certain specialists just because of the insurance. But one thing that I've been affected by just over the past year in reference to the pandemic has been the lack of opportunity for a lot of patients to seek mental health, behavioral health referrals. And, I have a lot of patients that are waiting, a lot of need that has been a problem over the years. So, we're definitely looking for like more behavioral medicine providers all across the country because it's so much of a need. So, I feel like if that is something that we can work on, it's going to help society as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Broady. Kimberly?
Well, yeah, I've been at this engineering thing for about 35 years. And I've had the most amazing projects and programs that I've worked on. They have taken me around the country, around the world, from as far south as New Zealand. And for a while there, I was going back and forth across the country to all the different NASA centers. And meeting people. Yeah, this is the former introvert. And so meeting and interfacing with everybody, but really is rewarding and I really enjoy is when I'm called to talk to the students. That is special. And I love the enthusiasm. I love the fact that they now have STEM. And of course, it's interesting. I fussed because I was like, you still need art. And then they threw the A in there and made it STEAM. So now I'm happy because, I was originally an art major. I'm happy now. So it's STEAM. And because, when the students ask me, God bless them, did I have something like that? I have to tell them no. I came along with, there was nothing. My computer was an abacus. I had a slide rule. I'm from the dark ages. So when you talk about what supports that you had, they didn't exist. So now to see the support and to be able to go out and support that support is just amazing. I work with the NSBE here locally, a lot actually with the Society of Women Engineers. I know we didn't mention them, but it's SWE. And the NASA has a speakers bureau. So I go around and talk to students in the local schools and that sort of thing. And so that's really been wonderful. And it's wonderful to see the enthusiasm for science, engineering, and technology, and kids from all strata. So that's the one thing. And for the thing that kind of I'm still fussing, I guess is really what you're still fussing about, and that is that we're still, as far as from college on into your career, we're still getting the numbers are still low. And the ones that are in, they are still frustrated with the microaggressions and the gaslighting, and that's still there. And the story is still the same song. Now we're at the 1000th verse. But the good news is that I hate to say good news, the silver lining is that it is still the same song. So we can learn from each other. We can take that knowledge and help fix it, make it better, teach the next generation. Together, we can all achieve. So, because let me tell you, nothing, it's still same song. It's not changed. So learn from us folks that have been through it. And then you go forward and you teach the folks that are coming behind you. So that would be my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Kimberly. Dr. McDaniel, and then Larry, if you have any final words for students listening.
The most rewarding part of my job because I am in dual roles, as a nurse educator is when my students absolutely get it And because these are people that are going to be moving forward as leaders in nursing, because I teach doctoral students. So these are people that are going to be leaders in nursing. They're nurse practitioners and they're executive leaders and they have other roles. So the most rewarding part is when my students are successful. And if they aren't successful, I feel as though I've failed. So that's the most rewarding part, because then in turn, I know they will go out and they will make the right decisions for our patients, which will result in positive outcomes. And the most frustrating part of my job is what I've spoken of earlier, and that is the inability to immediately increase the number of people that look like the patients that they serve. It's not an immediate fix, and that's a problem for me because of the statistics that you shared about the number of the number of people that are in those professions. So that's one of the most frustrating parts of my job. And the future of nursing, the future of STEM, it lies in the people who haven't even graduated from these programs. And so that really is very frustrating for me. And I need people to understand that if you want to get into nursing, or if you want to become an MD, you must have STEM. You need to start focusing on these STEM courses early on. If you want to be an engineer, you need to start early on focusing on these STEM courses. So getting them to do that is probably my most frustration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDaniel. And final words from the panel, I will give to Larry Rentz.
Thank you so much. So what I'll say is three things. First, try to be the best student you can be, not a perfect student. It's not about getting all A's and, being perfect and not ever getting a B or a C. Sometimes about being the best student you can be. And that's all determined on what it is for you. It could be, maybe I'm getting, maybe A's and B's of being a leader on campus and being involved in multiple orgs. That's what it was for me. I wasn't always a perfect A student. I was sometimes a C student, but I was always make sure I left an impact on the people around me and the larger organizations on my campus. Two is, like I said before, you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You only grow being uncomfortable, pushing your limits to what you can learn, pushing, yourself to be outgoing and try new things. Sometimes I know a lot of people, for them, it's like they don't know what they want to do. The only we can do is by trying a whole bunch of different things and seeing what you like and what you don't like. And the only way you can do that is putting yourself out there and being uncomfortable. And then the last thing I would say is you once you figure out what you really want to do, sometimes that really aligns with, your why. You need to find your why. What do you like to do? Why do you like to do it? Once you find your why, you can just hold on to it. And you hold on to it because you're going to have a lot of challenges, like we said, whether it's people not believing in you, these very difficult classes you're taking. And then just sometimes it's the self-doubt you might have about yourself. But if you hold on to that why, it really helps you overcome a lot of those things. So like I said, be the best student you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, and then, find your why. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to our panel for your words of inspiration and your wisdom and knowledge to help the future of health, the future of STEM, the future of nursing. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for our supporters for our annual fundraiser. Please, we ask for your help and your support in donations, and you can find us at the website at the bottom of the screen, instituteforequity.org. Thank you so much.